They say the forest keeps secrets, deep ones, secrets that don't want to be found. Caleb never believed that, not until the day he disappeared, 17 years old, quiet, and maybe a little different from the other kids in town. Caleb didn't care much for crowds or noisy places. He preferred the woods, those thick, sprawling trees beyond the edge of town, where the world felt simpler, where silence was a friend. That morning, he grabbed his backpack and slipped out the door before anyone could say much. His mother called after him, her voice soft, but with that hint of worry that never quite left. "Caleb, don't go too far, okay? And take your phone." He turned back, a small smile on his face, trying to reassure her. "I'll be fine. Just a hike." And with that, he was gone, swallowed up by the trees. The sun was warm, the birds sang overhead, and Caleb moved steadily along the trail. He knew these woods better than most. He'd spent years wandering the paths, learning where the rocks jutted out, where the moss grew thick, where the light filtered just right through the branches. He liked it here, away from all the noise, the small talk, the constant feeling of needing to explain himself. Out here, he was free. But this time, Caleb went farther than ever before, deeper into the forest where the trees grew taller, older, where the air felt heavier. He didn't notice the way the shadows seemed to lengthen early that day, or the way the silence grew too thick, like a weight pressing down. Hours passed. The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky with orange and pink. Birds quieted. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Back at home, dinner sat untouched. Caleb's parents exchanged worried glances. "He's probably just lost track of time," his father said, trying to sound confident. "Teenagers do that." "Yeah," his mother replied, but her voice trembled. "I just wish he'd call." The phone remained silent. Night crept in. Still no sign. The worry settled deep in their chests. The next morning, the entire town knew something was wrong. Caleb hadn't come home. The sheriff organized a search party, neighbors volunteering, faces pale and tense. "Spread out," the sheriff ordered. "Call his name. Check every path." The woods swallowed their voices. The trees stood silent, watching. Reports came in over crackling radios. "Team 1, clear near the creek. No sign. Team 2, check the ridge. Nothing." Then a voice broke the tension. "Team 3 here. The trail markers, they're wrong. They've changed." The word sent a shiver through the group. Trail markers were simple but vital. Carved signs, stacks of stones, guiding hikers safely through the forest. If those markers had moved, what did it mean? The searchers pushed forward, but the forest seemed different, unfamiliar, like it was shifting beneath their feet. Paths twisted, loops appeared where none should be. "Are we going in circles?" someone asked. The radio buzzed nervously. "Markers, they're not where we left them." The sheriff's jaw tightened. "Stay focused." Meanwhile, Caleb was moving too, though he didn't know where exactly. He was following something, a flicker of light, faint and unnatural, pulling him deeper into the woods. "It's just ahead," he murmured to himself. But the forest around him grew colder. Shadows stretched longer, twisting between the trees like silent watchers. He tried to shake the feeling of being followed, but found only silence behind him. At home, Caleb's mother clutched a photo, tears running silently down her face. "Come back to us," she whispered into the empty room. His father paced, desperate. "We won't stop looking." Days passed. The town was restless. Search parties grew, the forest yielding no answers. Late one night, the radio in the command center crackled. Team 3 reporting strange sounds. Whispers in the trees. Markers changed again. The sheriff swallowed hard. What else? Movement, like something's watching us. The forest was alive. Something was wrong. Caleb's steps faltered. The light faded. The woods closed in. The secrets of the forest weren't done yet. The forest waited, silent and endless. 10 searchers gathered at the edge of the trees, their breaths visible in the cool morning air. Each wore gear, backpacks heavy with supplies, radios clipped to their belts, flashlights swinging from their hands. The sheriff stood firm, his voice steady but eyes wary. "Split into pairs," he ordered. "Stay close. Keep your radios on. We find Caleb today." The teams nodded, stepping cautiously beneath the canopy where light barely pierced the thick leaves. The forest swallowed their footsteps. It was as if the trees were holding their breath, watching every move. Minutes passed, then hours, but the woods seemed unchanged. Time stretched thin, dragging like molasses. The sun moved slowly across a pale sky, barely marking the passing hours. "Radio check," one voice crackled through the static. "Here," came responses, scattered and soft. But the silence between was louder, heavy and thick, pressing down on their minds. Each step deeper into the forest felt like stepping into a different world, one untethered from time. One pair stopped. "Do you hear that?" whispered Mark. "I don't hear anything but the wind," replied Sarah, voice tense. Suddenly, a faint voice drifted through the radio. "Caleb? Caleb, can you hear us?" It was weak, distant, but unmistakably Caleb's voice. "Did you hear that?" Sarah whispered, eyes wide. "Yeah. Where is he?" The radio buzzed again. "Caleb?" The voice echoed once more, but this time it came from two directions. "Wait, that can't be," Mark muttered. They turned, searching into the dense trees, but there was only silence. The radios crackled with static, then a sharp beep. "Compass is spinning," Sarah reported, checking her device. "That's not possible," Mark said, gripping his compass. "It's broken." Other teams called in similar troubles. "GPS flickering here," one radio voice said. "Compass spinning like crazy," another reported. The forest seemed to pulse, alive with an unseen presence. "Stay focused," the sheriff's voice urged. "Keep your bearings." But the forest had other plans. Minutes felt like hours. The searchers found themselves retracing steps, paths looping back on themselves. "Are we going in circles?" whispered Jenna. "We should have found something by now," Mark said, frustration creeping in. The radios buzzed with fragmented voices and bursts of static, cutting through the oppressive quiet. Suddenly, from Team 4's radio, a panicked voice broke through. There's 11 of us out here." Silence. "11?" the sheriff echoed, disbelief clear. "There are only supposed to be 10, the voice stammered. "Who is the 11th? Static swallowed the radio. The forest seemed to grin in the dark. Time lost meaning. The searchers were not alone, and the forest was watching. 4 days after Caleb vanished into the forest, he came back as if pulled from a different world. The moment he stepped out of the shadows of the trees, everything else stopped. His mother was the first to see him. She stood frozen, disbelief and hope fighting across her face. Her voice cracked as she whispered his name. "Caleb?" He turned slowly, eyes calm and steady. No trace of the exhaustion or fear you would expect. No dirt, no scratches, only an unsettling stillness. "Mom," he said softly, his voice steady, like he had been waiting a long time. She rushed to him, tears blurring her vision. "Where were you? What happened?" "We've been so worried." Caleb didn't answer immediately. He looked past her to the dark line of trees behind them. "I was waiting," he finally said. Waiting. The word hung in the air, strange and heavy. At the police station, the questions came relentlessly. The investigator, a man with tired eyes and a sharp tone, sat across from Caleb. "Why did you send the others out? You said you were already found." Caleb's gaze didn't waver. "I didn't send anyone. I was waiting. They didn't need to come." The investigator leaned forward. "Waiting? Waiting for what, Caleb?" Caleb's lips pressed into a thin line. "For it to be over." Outside, news spread fast. The search party, 10 people who had gone in after him, were still missing. No sign, no trace. The town buzzed with rumors and fear. Back at home, Caleb's mother sat with her phone in her trembling hand. A new message flashed on the screen, from Caleb's number. "Don't trust him." Her heart froze. She looked at Caleb sitting across the room, the same boy who had just walked back from the forest. "Who sent this?" she demanded. Caleb's eyes darkened. "I don't know." Night fell heavy over the house. Caleb stood by the window, staring out toward the forest where the darkness seemed to pulse and breathe. His parents exchanged worried glances. Something about him had changed. The next morning, Caleb sat quietly at the kitchen table. His mother tried to reach out. "Caleb, Do you remember anything from the forest? Anything at all? He shook his head slowly. Number. It's all a blur. But you came back, she whispered. Safe and sound. Safe? Caleb repeated the word as if tasting it for the first time. I don't know what safe means anymore. Days passed. The town's unease grew. The missing searchers became a haunting presence, their absence felt in every whispered conversation and every worried glance. Caleb's nights grew restless. He woke from dreams filled with shadows and whispers, voices calling from the trees, pulling him back. One evening, he confided in his mother. The forest is alive, he said quietly. It's waiting for something. She held his hands tightly. We'll figure this out, Caleb. Together. But deep inside, Caleb felt the pull growing stronger. The whispers followed him everywhere. At the local diner, Caleb met with the sheriff again. We're running out of leads, the sheriff admitted. No signs of the others. Caleb stared down at his coffee, cold and untouched. They're still out there, he said softly. The sheriff looked up, eyes tired but alert. Then we keep searching. No matter what. Back at home, Caleb's phone buzzed again. Another message from his own number. You don't belong here. He stared at the screen, unease settling deep in his chest. That night, Caleb stepped outside, the cool air biting against his skin, his eyes fixed on the dark woods. Something waited, something that had followed him home. The forest voice was not finished. At first, it was the little things. Caleb sat in silence longer than he used to. Not the thoughtful kind of quiet that once defined him, but something else. Like a silence stretched too thin. Like something pretending not to breathe. At breakfast, his mother placed his favorite, blueberry waffles, in front of him. He didn't even glance at the plate, just sat there, fork in hand, unmoving. You're not hungry? She asked. He looked up, blinked slowly. I don't remember liking these. Her smile faltered. You always used to ask for them. He didn't reply. He pushed the plate aside without tasting a bite. Later that day, his father called for the dog, Rusty, the aging golden retriever who used to follow Caleb like a shadow. But when Caleb entered the room, Rusty growled low and backed into the hallway, tail between his legs. Caleb watched in silence, his eyes cold and unreadable. At night, his mother walked past his bedroom and paused. The light was on. She peeked inside. Caleb sat cross-legged on the floor, a notebook open on his lap, pencil scratching steadily. She knocked lightly on the door. What are you working on? He looked up, expression unreadable. Then he flipped the page closed. Just drawing. She stepped closer. Can I see? He hesitated, then slowly opened the notebook to the most recent page. A symbol stared back at her. Harsh, jagged lines twisting into a shape that meant nothing, and yet felt familiar in a way that made her stomach turn. What is it? She asked, voice soft. Caleb stared at the page. I don't know. I just keep seeing it. That night, as the house quieted into uneasy rest, Caleb lay awake. His ceiling fan spun in lazy circles, but he wasn't watching that. He was staring at the shadows on his wall. Shadows that didn't move right. Shadows that bent around his thoughts. A flicker, not quite a memory, crept through his mind. Trees, tall and wrong. A low humming sound vibrating beneath the ground. A voice that didn't belong to him whispering from behind his own eyes. He sat up in bed. Sweat soaked the back of his shirt. His hands trembled, and when he looked down at them, they didn't feel like his. At breakfast, his mother noticed another thing. Caleb was using his left hand. He had always been right-handed. You're using the wrong hand, she said gently. He paused mid-bite, then switched, quietly, to his right. I forget sometimes. Forget what? Which part is me? Her heart skipped. She said nothing more. As the days passed, Caleb spent more time alone. He didn't text friends. He didn't listen to music. He didn't ask to go hiking. He just stared. At trees, at corners, at nothing. Long, unblinking stares, like he was listening to something no one else could hear. Once, his mother caught him whispering in his room. She stood just outside, trying to make out the words. No, not yet. I said not yet. The whispering stopped the moment her hand touched the door frame. When she opened it, Caleb looked up at her, calm as ever. Were you talking to someone? He shook his head, just thinking out loud. But his eyes held something that didn't used to be there. A quiet knowing. Something old. Something borrowed. One afternoon, Caleb's father sat him down. You sure you're okay, son? I'm fine. You've been acting different. Caleb tilted his head. Maybe I'm just not who you thought I was. His father forced a laugh. Well, who else would you be? Caleb didn't laugh back. That's the question, isn't it? That night, the dreams returned. But they didn't feel like dreams. He walked barefoot through fog, the trees above him impossibly tall, their branches twitching like fingers. He looked down and saw not one shadow, but two, and the second one moved slightly out of sync with him. He woke, gasping. Down the hall, his mother tossed restlessly. Something had been gnawing at her all day. That sense, the one mothers have when something isn't right, when something small refuses to sit still. She rose, padded quietly toward the bathroom, reached to straighten the towels, then paused. There beside the sink were two toothbrushes, one blue, the one Caleb always used, and beside it, another, the red one, identical in wear, bristles softened, as if it had been used every day. But no one in the house used red. She stared, heart beginning to pound. Caleb only had one toothbrush, didn't he? She stood motionless, breath caught in her throat, and somewhere behind her, from Caleb's room, came a quiet sound. Not footsteps, not movement. A soft hum, like breathing, but not one person breathing. Two. She turned slowly. The hallway was empty, and yet, it didn't feel that way. It began with the noises. First, it was soft, just a creak on the porch late at night. Then the creak turned into slow, deliberate footsteps across the wooden boards, stopping just beneath Caleb's window. His mother heard them first. She sat up in bed, heart hammering, straining to hear. Then a voice, muffled, distant, just outside. Help me. The next morning, she said nothing. She only watched Caleb closely as he ate his toast. He seemed tired, more than usual. You sleep all right? She asked. He nodded without looking up, but there were faint scratches on his wrist, dirt beneath the nails of both hands, and a thin line of mud across the edge of his bedsheet. 2 nights later, it was his father who heard it. Low whispers under the floorboards, the kind that don't sound like words until you lean in too close, and then they become far too clear. They said his name, not once, not shouted, just breathed. Michael, over and over. Michael. He followed the sound to the living room, flashlight in hand. It died the second he pointed it toward the front door, just blinked out. And then, silence. In the morning, the dog was missing. The gate hadn't been opened. No signs of escape, just gone. Caleb didn't ask where Rusty went. He never even mentioned it. And that was the strangest part. The town had begun whispering. A neighbor 2 blocks over claimed she saw Caleb walking barefoot along the shoulder of the highway at 2 a.m., heading east toward the woods. She almost stopped to offer him a ride, but said the way he turned and stared at her through the window made her keep driving. But that same night, Caleb had been asleep in his room, or at least that's what his mother believed, until she checked the camera. The trail cam they had placed just outside the house after everything started, aimed toward the forest edge. She clicked through the footage. Hours of nothing. More nothing. A blur. Then, something. At exactly 2:07 a.m., a figure appeared at the edge of the woods. Pale, thin, barefoot, walking toward the house, not away. It looked like Caleb, moved like him, head tilted the same way, but it didn't blink. Not once. And when it reached the edge of the yard, it stopped, turned toward the camera, and smiled. She shut the laptop without breathing. She wanted to believe it was a glitch, a trick of light, something explainable. But then came the phone call. The school counselor. He said Caleb hadn't been showing up to class for 3 days. That made no sense. Every morning she'd watched him walk out the door, backpack over his shoulder. She waited the next morning, pretended to go back upstairs, then watched from behind the curtains. At 7:58 a.m., Caleb stepped outside. Except, it wasn't quite right. The way he walked, too steady, too smooth. He didn't look back at the house. Didn't lock the door. Just moved forward like he was on tracks. She followed. Quietly, carefully. Out the front door, past the yard, down the street. But before she could catch up, he turned the corner. She hurried and stopped. No one was there. The street was empty. No footsteps. No doors closing. Just wind. She turned back, shaken. Inside the house, Caleb sat at the table eating cereal. He looked up. "Where'd you go?" She tried to answer, but couldn't find the words. She wanted to ask if he just left, if he'd walked to school, then doubled back, if he even remembered stepping out the door. But his eyes were steady, waiting. "I just needed air." That night, she didn't sleep. At 3:17 a.m., the baby monitor in the attic, left over from when Caleb was small, still plugged in by mistake, began to crackle. Then it played a voice. Not static, not white noise, just one sentence. "You brought it back." She ran upstairs. The attic was dark, the monitor untouched. She unplugged it and sat on the floor, knees pulled to her chest. The next morning, Caleb came down the stairs with scratches on his arms. Again, she stared. "Where do those keep coming from?" He looked down, seemed surprised. "I don't know." She stepped forward. "Caleb, are you sleepwalking?" "Maybe." Have you been going outside?" His voice was quiet. "Sometimes I don't feel like I'm here." He looked up at her. "Sometimes I think I never came back." She stared at him, frozen. He smiled, but not with his mouth, just with his eyes. That afternoon, the sheriff dropped by. Friendly, polite, said they found a footprint in the woods while checking the perimeter again. Just one, barefoot, deep in the mud. Size matched Caleb's, but no other tracks led to or from it. It was as if someone had been standing there, waiting, watching. The sheriff left without saying much else. That night, her phone buzzed. Unknown number, just one message. "Look outside." She stepped to the window, pulled back the curtain. In the yard, standing just past the tree line, was a figure, still, facing the house. She blinked. Gone. She rushed to Caleb's room. He was asleep, or pretending to be. His fingernails were caked in dirt, the soles of his feet, black with soil. She backed away, heart pounding. Down the hall, the bathroom light flickered. She stepped in, turned on the tap. Beneath the sink, a second pair of shoes. Not his usual pair. Not even a pair she recognized. Older, covered in leaves, and wet, as if they'd been walking through the woods for days. She closed the cabinet, trembling. Behind her, Caleb stood in the doorway. "Did you hear something?" She turned slowly. "No." He smiled. "It's, probably nothing." Then he turned and walked away. But for the first time, she noticed something she hadn't before. His shadow moved just a second too late. It was a gas station clerk who made the call. Said a boy stumbled in just after dawn, barefoot, wild-eyed, covered in dirt and bramble. He kept saying the same thing. "I got out. I got out. I got out." When the deputy arrived, the boy was crouched behind the fridge in aisle 3, clutching a bottle of water like it was the only thing keeping him alive. The deputy called it in. The dispatcher froze, because the boy he described, same height, same scars, same dark hair, was already home, already asleep in his room, already accounted for. Until that moment, the second Caleb was taken to the hospital, they ran tests, scanned for trauma, infection, injury. Physically, he was fine, better than fine. Perfect vitals, excellent hydration, barely a scratch beneath all the surface grime. He said he remembered trees, endless trees, a loop that never ended. He said he remembered voices whispering directions that always led him back to where he started. He said he saw someone else, himself, standing across the ravine just watching, smiling. He said he ran, and then he woke up outside the gas station. The town panicked. Whispers moved faster than facts. Was it a lie? A trick? A copy? Was this the real Caleb? And the one they'd brought home just a week ago, the imposter? DNA tests were ordered. Precaution, they said. Necessary. The results came back identical. 100% match. Same fingerprints, same blood type, same retinal scan, even the mole behind the left ear. But something was off. The new Caleb, the one from the gas station, hated the light. They had to dim the hospital room. He flinched every time they pulled the curtains. When a nurse accidentally turned on a reading lamp near his bed, he screamed, clutched his head like it was splitting in two. But the original, the one already at home, didn't react at all. He just stood in the hallway, staring at the hospital room through the glass, calm, cold. They brought them face to face. Each one stared at the other. Then, in perfect sync, they spoke. He's the fake, not me. The town didn't know what to do. Sheriff called an emergency meeting at the community hall. Half the town showed up. Parents, neighbors, teachers, all with the same question written across their faces. Who do we believe? The sheriff laid it out as plainly as he could. We can't keep both. Murmurs erupted. Questions followed. What do you mean, keep? Are you saying, we're not making decisions tonight, he said, cutting them off. But this isn't just a case of mistaken identity. We have two boys, same memories, same DNA, same everything. Except one of them isn't him. The room fell silent. Then a voice from the back. How do we know either of them are? And that was the moment things began to fracture. Caleb's parents were pulled in two directions. His mother insisted the boy at home felt like hers, even if something was off, even if she couldn't quite explain it. She had looked into his eyes, made him soup, washed his clothes. She said, "That's my son." But his father hesitated. He said something about instinct, about watching the trail cam footage again, about how the real Caleb used to laugh a certain way, and that sound was gone. In its place, silence. The Caleb at home never laughed, and the one in the hospital, he smiled. That smile. Too wide, too practiced, like someone who had seen the expression used and was trying to mimic it. Back at the house, things grew stranger. The lights flickered when home Caleb entered the room. He never left footprints, even with muddy shoes. He never yawned, never blinked more than once every few minutes. He never called the dog's name, even though the dog was still missing. Meanwhile, gas station Caleb started to regain pieces of memory. Small things at first. His locker combo, the name of the neighbor's cat, the old trail behind Miller's farm. But then, other things. He said the trees moved when no one watched. He said there was a sound in the woods that mimicked voices. Not exactly right, but close enough to fool someone in the dark. He said, if you hear yourself calling for help, don't follow the sound. And then, quietly, I don't think I got all the way out. One night, the two Calebs were kept in separate homes, guarded, sheriff's orders, but at exactly 2 a.m., the radios across both locations buzzed to life with static. Then a voice came through. Just one word. Return. The next morning, Caleb's mother found her bedroom mirror cracked down the middle. In the bathroom drawer, 2 toothbrushes again. Only this time, one was soaked in mud. Home Caleb stood in the hallway when she stepped out. She asked, "What's going on?" He said nothing, just stared, and smiled. That same smile. Later that day, the Caleb from the hospital had a seizure during a routine exam. They said it was brought on by exposure to bright light. His body spasmed, contorted, like it was trying to escape itself. And when he finally stopped shaking, he whispered, "He's not alone in there." That night, someone left a note on the sheriff's windshield. Block letters, smudged ink. One is a vessel, the other is a warning. Choose wrong, and you let it out. The sheriff called another meeting. This time, fewer people showed. Fear was beginning to win. In the back row, someone asked the question no one wanted to say out loud. What if we already did? The footage had been sitting in the evidence room for weeks. One of the drones had gone offline during the second day of the search. Lost signal, presumed crashed, forgotten in the chaos. But a hiker found it, half buried near the river bend. Its casing cracked, but the memory card intact. When the footage was handed over to police, no one expected it to change anything. They were wrong. The video started normal, a wide sweep above the treetops, then a slow descent, following the search team as they moved through the underbrush in formation. 10 of them, then 11. Someone noticed it first during playback. The timestamp. It was dated before Caleb came home, and yet, there he was, clear as day. Caleb, walking between Officer Martinez and local volunteer Joe Freeman. Same jacket, same backpack, same gait, except Caleb had already been found days earlier, or so they thought. The investigators froze the frame, played it again, frame by frame. This Caleb didn't look lost. He looked alert, watching the others, matching their steps, almost too well, like he was learning. Then came the flicker. One of the volunteers, face blurred, not by motion, not by error, but something else. His outline shifted slightly. His skin seemed to ripple beneath the camera's lens. 1 second, he was there. The next, just a jagged smear of static. Then he'd return. Wrong for a single frame. Arm too long. Neck turned at an unnatural angle. They rewound it. Paused. Enhanced. It didn't help. The footage wouldn't stabilize. The tech team assumed it was a glitch, until the investigator in charge, a man named Arthur Langley, left the viewing room to make a call. He never returned. His phone was found on the floor of the station's hallway, screen still lit, call log open. He'd dialed 911 and never spoke. His car sat in the lot, unlocked, his coat still on the back of his chair. They searched the building top to bottom. Nothing. The cameras in the hallway? Static. Just during that window. One officer watched the footage again. Desperate to find answers, she paused at frame 3:42:16. Caleb, the version in the forest, looked straight up at the drone, not at the team, not at anything on the ground, at the camera. His lips moved, slow, deliberate. There was no audio, just wind. But if you read them, if you really looked, the words seemed clear. You're not watching, you're remembering. The officer backed away from the screen, unplugged the monitor. She never watched the footage again. Later that night, someone knocked on her door. She didn't answer, but her dog growled at the wall for 2 straight hours. Across town, Caleb stood outside again, his reflection in the glass darker than his body. His mother had begun to lock her bedroom at night. Not for safety, for distance. She didn't know if she feared him, or the thought that maybe she didn't anymore. Another investigator reviewed the drone footage. He isolated a section just before the video's final moments. The team is walking, 11 shapes, the 12th figure, flickering. Then, suddenly, they all stop. They look to the left, together in eerie synchrony, as if commanded. The screen buzzes, the image skews, and for a single frame, a shape appears between the trees. Not a person, too tall, too thin, limbs like branches, body warped by angles not meant for this world. Then it's gone. The screen returns to static, and the drone crashes. Final timestamp, 3:12 a.m. The same time as the knock that started everything weeks ago. The footage is locked away now. Only a few have access. They call it the Forest Hour, and no one's sure if it's showing the past or something still coming. That night, the second Caleb, the one from the gas station, sat awake in his holding room, staring at the ceiling. He whispered a name, over and over, a name no one had ever spoken before. He said, "It's waiting for me to forget who I am, and when I do, it'll wear me like skin." Then, smiling through tears, he whispered, "I don't think it's just in the forest anymore. They say memory is the thread that holds you together, that without it, we unravel. But no one ever warns what happens when the thread rewinds itself and knots." It started with Caleb at the kitchen table. He smiled faintly, fork resting between his fingers, and said, "Remember that camping trip? The one where Dad got stung by a bee and screamed like a little kid?" His mother looked up from the stove. "No, Caleb, that never happened." "Yeah, it did. You were wearing that purple hoodie. You burned the marshmallows. It was just before I said it never happened." Her voice was sharper this time, uneasy. Caleb blinked, stared at her. "I remember it." She shook her head. "Your father's allergic to bees, Caleb. He's never gone camping. Not once." He went quiet, looked down at his plate. Later that night, in the facility across town, the other Caleb, the one they still didn't know what to call, sat across from a counselor behind glass. He was calm, steady. When I was 6, I broke my wrist falling off the swing in our backyard. Mom cried the whole way to the ER. She held my hand the whole time, wouldn't let go. The counselor scribbled something. When Caleb's mother was brought in, she nodded. That happened. The other Caleb smiled. Back at the house, the first Caleb's behavior grew stranger. He stopped sleeping. He took long showers in the dark. He wouldn't touch his phone anymore. Said the sound of the ringtone made his stomach twist. One morning, he was found digging through the attic. Boxes tossed everywhere. He said he was looking for proof. What he found was a notebook. It was old, leather-bound, with a broken strap, the edges soft and stained, like it had weathered too many seasons. His handwriting, his doodles in the margins, even the way he scratched out misspelled words, unmistakably his. But he had no memory of writing a single page. He flipped to the first entry. It read, "If you're reading this, you're not me anymore." He slammed it shut, tried to throw it away. The next day, it was back on his desk, open. Same page, same warning. He tried again. This time, burned it in the fireplace. Ashes blackened the grate. That night, he dreamed of the forest again. Only this time, he was watching himself from above, the trees bending around him like ribs. He woke up with the journal in his hands, open to a new page. You've been overwritten. It's learning your shape. Every memory you lose becomes a door it steps through. He slammed it shut again, but his hands wouldn't stop shaking. He told his mother, showed her the book. She read the entry. Her face went pale. When he looked again, the page was blank. The ink, gone. Just empty lines. The night, she called the counselor at the facility, asked to speak with the other Caleb. She said only 3 words to him. "What's the song I used to hum when you had nightmares?" He didn't hesitate. "Sway with Me" by Julie London. She covered her mouth. That Caleb, the second one, remembered every detail, every scratch on the walls of his childhood bedroom, every bedtime story, even the name of the dog they lost when he was 8. The first Caleb had called it Buddy, but the real name was Maxwell. Caleb number 2 remembered Maxwell's broken tail. The first Caleb didn't. The first Caleb, the one living in her house, had started locking the bathroom door even when no one else was home, started pacing at night, started speaking to his reflection, not out loud, but with his lips moving, silently. Once she caught him standing in front of the hallway mirror, staring not at himself, but behind himself, as if something was there. He didn't flinch when she called his name, didn't blink, just smiled, thin and glassy, then said, "Do you think dreams can leak into the waking world?" "That may be. The wrong version of us gets left behind?" She didn't answer. She couldn't. In town, rumors spread. Whispers about mirror twins. Folks saying they'd seen 2 Calebs walking near the woods, one looking normal, the other moving wrong, like a puppet with joints too loose. A teacher from school visited the house just to check in. She left pale, shaken, muttering that Caleb had quoted a book they read in 9th grade, word for word, but with lines that had never existed. Poetry that rhymed in reverse. Back at the facility, Caleb number 2 asked for the mirror to be removed from his room. Said it wasn't safe. When asked why, he said, "Because it doesn't copy me anymore. It waits." The journal returned again. Final page this time. Just one sentence. When the last memory goes, it gets to choose which one of us stays. The first Caleb stopped speaking after that. Sat at the dinner table in silence. Food untouched. When his mother finally asked him, "What do you remember most about me?" he answered without looking up, "Your voice." But only when it's afraid. That night, she heard footsteps outside her door. Heavy. Slow. Then a whisper from behind it. "Tell me something only I would know. Before it's too late." She never answered. And when morning came, one of the Calebs was gone. No note, no trace. Just the journal, sitting open in the hallway with one final line scrawled into the margin. "I'm sorry. I think I believed I was him." It began with the dreams. Not just for Caleb. Not just for his mother, but for the whole town. At first, it was just a few whispers in sleep, forgotten by morning, brushed off as stress or leftover memories from stories passed around like urban myths. But then the dreams changed. They grew louder, deeper, like voices from beneath the soil, dragging themselves toward the surface. One by one, people began reporting the same thing: a path of trees, spiraling in on themselves, dark roots clawing at their ankles, a sound, low, harmonic, not quite music, not quite a voice, saying only, "Return what you borrowed." Caleb's mother woke one night drenched in sweat, heart pounding. She hadn't dreamed about Caleb. She had dreamed of herself, standing at the edge of the woods, holding a lantern, while a line of people walked past her into the dark. Every one of them had Caleb's face. In town, strange things returned. Radios left unplugged began to hiss. Phone lines rang, briefly, and when answered, silence gave way to a whisper. 37 steps left. Turn twice. Dig. And then the line would go dead. An old ranger, one of the first to help during the initial search, smashed his CB radio with a hammer after he swore he heard his own voice calling from it. A week later, he was found in his truck, parked near the forest edge. His hands were clenched around the wheel, but his eyes were fixed toward the trees, mouth open, a look not of fear, but recognition, like something he once lost had finally found him. The town sheriff received a report from hikers about a foul smell. They found a body propped against a moss-covered rock, half sunk into the forest floor like it had been swallowed partway. It was one of the searchers, the one who, according to timestamps, was with Caleb when he supposedly emerged. Medical records were precise. He had been dead for at least a week before Caleb ever returned. That fact spread quickly, but no one had an explanation, because Caleb had been with them, or something that looked like him. In the facility, the second Caleb became silent, no longer speaking, eating, or sleeping. He sat cross-legged on the floor of his room, staring at the corner. One evening, the staff went to check his vitals. The bed was untouched. The cameras glitched. 10 seconds of missing footage. And when they came back online, the room was empty. No signs of exit. No open doors. Only a word scratched into the paint above the bed. Listen. Across town, the original Caleb had started walking in his sleep again. His mother would find him standing at windows, hands pressed to the glass, eyes tracking something just out of reach. One night, she asked him, "What do you see out there?" He didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, he whispered, "They're trying to come back. One of them already did. The rest are waiting." He refused to let her touch him after that, would flinch at sudden noises, would repeat numbers under his breath, 37, 74, 14, always in the same order. No one could trace where they came from. The numbers were found again, carved into the back of a school desk, and again painted under the bridge near the river. Every time, they were paired with a symbol, the same symbol Caleb had once sketched in his notebook weeks ago, a circle, split by 2 vertical lines. No one could find the second Caleb. It was like he had been unmade. The only trace left was an audio file recovered from the security system. It played nothing for 30 seconds. Then, a voice. Just 4 words. It followed the wrong one. After that, the system crashed entirely. In the days that followed, Caleb grew increasingly distant. He didn't cry, didn't speak unless spoken to, but he began carrying a small stick, tapping it softly against the floor, over and over, the same rhythm each time. Tap, 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 tap. When asked about it, he said, "It's the code for when they're close." His mother didn't understand, but one morning she awoke to silence. No taps, no footsteps, just the back door left open. She ran outside barefoot, calling his name, found nothing but footprints in the dew, small, bare, heading straight toward the woods. She followed until the edge, stopped where the sunlight stopped, and there, just a few feet into the trees, Caleb stood, motionless, facing the forest. His lips moved. She stepped closer, closer still, close enough to hear what he was saying. "I hear them again." She didn't speak, didn't move, just watched as her son took another step forward, and another, until the trees folded behind him like curtains drawn shut. The wind blew once. Software, but in it, echoes. 10 voices, maybe 11, calling home. It began with one. A man emerged from the woods early one morning, clothes tattered, eyes hollow, beard overgrown. He said his name was Kyle Henley. He was one of the original 10 who went into the forest in search of Caleb. He claimed he remembered everything, but the problem was, Kyle had already been declared dead. His dental records matched the decomposed body found near the moss-covered rock just 2 weeks prior. And yet, there he was, alive, standing at the edge of town. The sheriff looked him in the eye and asked, "Where have you been?" Kyle didn't blink. He simply said, "I never left. You just stopped looking in the right place." No one knew what to do. They ran tests. Blood, DNA, fingerprints. Every single one confirmed his identity. But there were discrepancies. His voice was slower, a slight lag between breath and speech, like a delay in the signal. And when he smiled, something about it didn't line up, as if the muscles were copying an old memory of what a smile should look like. 3 days later, a second one came out. Then another. Each time, someone new stumbled from the trees, dazed, calm, claiming to be from the original search party. They all remembered different things. One swore they'd only been gone for hours. Another insisted it had been decades. Their memories didn't match timelines. They didn't even match each other, but they all knew things they shouldn't. One knew the color of the wallpaper in the ranger station, despite it being repainted years ago. Another called the sheriff by a childhood nickname no one had used in 30 years. And one asked Caleb's mother how her husband was doing. Her husband had died in a car accident when Caleb was still a baby. No one had mentioned him in over a decade. And yet the man described him perfectly, down to the crooked knuckle on his left hand. The town tried to stay calm, but things shifted. Streetlights began flickering in patterns. Static interrupted radio stations with soft whispers. The pattern kept returning. 3 tones, a pause, then a low hum. Then came the mirrors. One by one, they began fogging from the inside. Not moisture, no steam, just a haze, like something exhaled from the glass itself. People swore they saw shapes behind their reflections, not mimicking, watching. Even the animals began to behave strangely. Dogs barked at empty corners. Cats refused to enter certain rooms. And the forest, once alive with wind and birdsong, had gone utterly, perfectly still. Caleb had not returned, not since that day. His mother left the porch light on every night, just in case. But deep down, she wasn't sure what she was waiting for, until she found the photo. It had been tucked away in a school yearbook, hidden between pages. It was taken the morning the search began. All 10 searchers lined up for the camera before heading into the woods, smiling, confident, ready. But when she looked closer, her hands began to shake. There, near the center, was Caleb, smiling, standing with the others, standing among them. She stared at it for hours. The timestamp matched. This wasn't a later photo. This was before he'd ever come home. But that didn't make sense, because he had come home. He'd walked into the yard. He'd eaten dinner. He'd sketched symbols. He'd whispered strange things in the dark. She remembered the way his fingers tapped the floor, how his eyes tracked things she couldn't see, how he flinched at his own reflection. The Caleb who returned had never belonged outside the woods. The voice inside her head whispered what she already feared. We never lost Caleb. We just never knew which one was ours. And just like that, it all fell into place. The voice that echoed from 2 directions, the radios buzzing with phantom calls, the numbers repeated in his sleep. They weren't signs of something trying to return. They were warnings of something that already had. Each of the returns spoke in riddles. None could explain what had happened in the woods. Only fragments, echoes, a place outside time, a voice without a face, and always the same phrase whispered at the end. It made us into echoes, and then sent one of us back. Which one? No one ever knew. And now, as the forest waits silent again, and the porch light flickers, and the photo lies face down in a locked drawer, the question lingers like a splinter under the skin of the town. Which Caleb came back? And did he ever really leave? Because echoes always return to their source, and somewhere, deeper than roots, beyond the trees, something is still listening.